Yeah, here we are, putting more talk into Grok Talk. Welcome back. Thanks again to CNHT, the chairman, he's right here, for letting us use the space. And, of course, granitegrok.com, the bloggers thereof, who are every day toiling away in their spare time to provide you with interesting links and content at granitegrok.com for you to read from a conservative constitutional point of view. And, of course, one of the things we talk about a lot is voter fraud. And if we're going to talk about voter fraud, the guy you need to have here is Mr. Ed Naile. And real quickly, before we do that, I just want to remind people, if you didn't know, Joe Barton, the AG dropped the unsworn falsification charge against Joe Barton. And things are moving along nicely in his favor, so we'll have some interesting developments in that whole arrangement coming up real soon. You can read about it at granitegrok.com. So, because I wanted to mention that in the first segment, and I forgot. So, we haven't talked to you about vote fraud in a while, so you've got to have some good stuff for us.
I got a ton of stuff, and I'd like to go back to our old friend Carl Robert Gibson, who's awaiting trial on voter suppression. And we know that Carl is a professional campaigner, like a Black Lives Matter, that crowd, that end. MoveOn.org. He's
a Bernie Sanders guy.
Yeah, he came to. He actually was here in New Hampshire working for Bernie Sanders, because we know that from seeing the pictures of him with him, and that's all he writes about. Well, he was in trouble, and he's awaiting trial for voter suppression. Last May 14th, he pretended to be a candidate for the House here in New Hampshire, and issued a press release that was designed to reduce the turnout of Republicans in a special election. So he got caught, he got arrested. The trial was supposed to be going on now, really. And I've been following it. I've been going to all the hearings, and we've had a lot of fun with that. I went in and sat down next to him one time. He had no clue it was me. I sent you guys the story about that. We had that on the Granite Grok before the judge even heard their case. So now we're in the point where they're supposed to be pulling a jury, having the final jury hearings. I went to one a week or so ago, and it looks as though the judge in this case is trying to make this complicated. Gibson made a tweet and some offers to the press that this young lady was not going to run in her name. Somebody spotted that, turned him in. He's arrested. Now he's got an attorney who's saying that was nothing but satire.
Right, free speech.
Freedom of speech. And he's a writer. He writes for Al Jazeera and all these different articles on U.S. Uncut, and a lot of obscure websites. So he's a fabulous writer of stories about oppression and all your left-wing issues. He's not a satirist at all. He's a political assassin. He was here in 2012 on behalf of Credo PAC, a very wealthy left-wing PAC out of San Francisco, to go after Frank Ginta.
He did a documentary, did he?
Did a little book on it. There's a lot of videos on Carl. If you look up Carl Robert Gibson on Google, if you Google his name, like the top 20 things are stuff we wrote about him, exposing him. So we've pretty much damaged his career.
We've defined him.
No, hang on.
He is defined. And
you
now
can actually hear yourself when you're talking, and I have your microphone off?
Yeah, sort of.
So we're waiting this trial.
You have a great sound system in your head, because I don't hear myself. So
I went in and watched this thing unfold. One of the things he got, in the piece of evidence the AG was going to use was an article in the Concord Monitor about their story. They called him up, say, "Hey, you were just arrested. What's going on?" He goes, "Well, I had too many beers." Blah. Doesn't say, "Oh, it was satire." He said, "I had one too many beers." The Concord Monitor has filed a motion to quash their reporter from being a witness in the case.
Why?
So they feel that if they talk about crime or something they were involved in, it would diminish their ability to collect news, which the argument then is, well, then you're perfectly happy to collect fake news, which is what Carl Gibson was sent to you, as a matter of fact, and the AP wire service. So you're perfectly happy to collect that and somehow know how to filter through it, but you don't want to be a witness in the case where somebody sent you phony news. So that's how sad this is. So I actually have some of the stuff here I have their motion. It's affidavit of Steve Leone, I'm the editor of the Concord Monitor. I've been a journalist for 30 years. My strong belief that news organizations should report on criminal news because of its vital interest to the readers. That sounds normal. If reporters were frequently compelled to testify in criminal cases, I believe there would be multiple negative or potential negative consequences for news organizations. So they want out of this. They don't want to be...
I would say that would only be consequential if they weren't reporting facts, right?
Right. What they're reporting is what they would be testifying on to, that they called this guy, and here's what he said, and that's what they printed. And he's not denying it's him.
Well, the other thing is they'd be exposed for not actually digging down to see how true the news story is.
Like not calling up Yvonne Dean Bailey and saying, is this true?
Yeah.
Unlike us, who have dug into this to the molecular level. So I was in the courtroom for this, and the judge said, it's a very complicated case. Maybe this go directly to the Supreme Court. And maybe the AG should come to some sort of agreement with the defense on this issue. And Carl's just sitting there, duh. I don't know if he knows what's even going on. So I filed an amicus brief, 17-page amicus brief with the court on the day that this hearing was held. 17 pages of everything you'd ever want to know about Carl Gibson, how he's done this before to
GE?
To General Electric. He's done this to Mississippi Public Radio, that he brags about this stuff, and that he's actually a resident of Kentucky. He's not a resident of New Hampshire, although he's a voter here, and voted here in 2012 in person, in 2014 by absentee, right before he got arrested. So I submitted this 17-page amicus brief to the court. I gave it to Steve Labonte from the AG's office. I gave a copy to the defense counsel for Ignatz. And I didn't have a copy for the Concord Monitor because I didn't know they were showing up. Apparently, Steve Labonte didn't know they were showing up either. But a judge got the copy, and I went in last Friday to the court file for Carl Robert Gibson, and there's an objection from the AG's office to the filing of an amicus brief without my name even being mentioned, and my amicus brief is not in the file.
Really?
So how you get something stamped and dated and put into a court document and have it objected to by the Attorney General and not have it in the folder for everyone to read, I don't know. That sounds odd to me. It
does.
So in any case, I filed this. It's a right-to-know request, as per 91A, to the New Hampshire Attorney General's office, May 24th. That's not that long ago, right? Ed Naile, here's my phone number, Tubbs Hill Road. Please be advised that I'm requesting the current address of Carl Robert Gibson, who is currently awaiting trial in Merrimack Superior Court, case number 2172015, CR00625. He no longer lives at his former Summit Street rental property used on his court documents. He no longer lives there. Mr. Gibson has to renew his Kentucky driver's license shortly, as it expires on June 11th, 2016. Kentucky document enclosed. My request has to do with his legal domicile. Thank you in advance for your cooperation, Ed Naile. So here's the Commonwealth of Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, Division of Driver Licensing, Carl Robert Gibson. Here's his license number, G027165888, and expires on a date it was issued was 11/27/2012. That's right after he voted here in 2012. Right? Mm-hmm. And he has to renew it, and by Kentucky law, he has to renew it by 6/11/2016 in person. Kentucky has a statute that says the possession of a Kentucky driver's license is de facto proof you are a resident of the Commonwealth.
Wow.
So that's Kentucky law, right? So whenever you find a scumbag, low-life, dirtball vote thief, go to the state they actually live in for the laws they're breaking there, even though New Hampshire will not prosecute them. And here's what I got back. From Ann Rice. Wednesday, May 25th, subject right to know request. Good morning, Mr. Naile. We received your request for the current address of Carl Robert Gibson. That information is exempt from disclosure under RSA 91A:5 as private information.
What?
So do you guys ever look in the papers when somebody gets arrested for something?
Yeah.
It says so-and-so of 33 Cherry Hill Drive, Lebanon, New Hampshire, whatever. Suddenly, I think this is a subtle way of telling me that Carl's in the witness protection program. What's going on here? Or is it just a natural propensity of Ed Naile asks for something and doesn't get it? Ed Naile files copies of something in a file, and they don't show up there. So I think I'm having an effect on these people. I'm going to take this and all the other information and mail it to the Concord Monitor. Hey. So I know that they know that their story they are avoiding has been handed to them.
And you ought to put something up on Granite Grok
I'm
because
going to put this all up.
Trust me, they watch Granite Grok.
Yeah, I know that.
I was going to say, can you put in a right-to-know request to find out who it is that didn't put your document in the folder at the court?
I could do that.
You could do
Well,
that.
they're going to blame that on some poor devil working.
Yeah,
and I have this.
Do we have a blog or a newspaper in Lexington, Kentucky, or wherever?
I'm already in touch with the AG's office there. So
yeah, but you want to maybe a newspaper story down there, right?
I could put that in. I have tried to do. He's from Elizabethtown, Kentucky. I have sent them stuff. I haven't checked to see whether they've published it, but that's the fun things I can do at 2 o'clock in the morning, like the Brisbane Times. I'm in correspondence with them about the Australians that were voting here on, that were here on behalf of Bernie Sanders, and they were here. They were in Nevada and they were in New York, I believe. They were in 3 different states. Because when you look up the one guy's name, Sanjay Deep, whatever, some Pakistani name, you'll find that he is the contact for Sanders house parties in 3 different states. Yeah. So now, they know he was here.
It was very interesting. My time for actually blogging has been extremely limited to stuff going on at home. But I do know that Kentucky and California popped up this past week
for voter
fraud. So I bet that if you were to contact Kentucky and a couple of the media outlets out there that have been carrying the Kentucky story anyways, I bet you could get this added in.
I want to contact the assistant AG out there that I have his phone number. He's called me back. We've emailed back and forth. He would like to bag this guy, so I want to contact him. But if he renews this driver's license for $5.50, I can, in Kentucky, use this driving license number to get the current status of it.
We were talking with Dr. Samuel Gregg in the previous 2 segments, and one of the things was the rule of law, and it's becoming very apparent that if you look at our political leadership in D.C. and in a lot of cases here in Concord, we're seeing that rule of law being disregarded. And as Glenn Reynolds of Instapundits has said, pretty soon we are going to see a middle-class anarchy arise because if the leadership is not going to follow the rule of law, then why should we?
If Black Lives Matter can jump all over cop cars in these specific cities on video and no one ever gets arrested or fined or even picked up or admonished in any way, then that's going to happen in other places. When people go, Ed, how can you continue to do this? I go, well, this is happening and that's happening. I say, well, we can fix that during the 2nd week of anarchy. During the 3rd week of anarchy, we can fix this or that. Everything will be fine. We'll have America back. Maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks of anarchy, and it'll straighten itself right out. Because it's got to work. It has to work.
If you've ever played the game Civilization, one of the older versions, if you wanted to switch forms of government, like you start out as a despotism and then you can move to a monarchy or what, so on and so forth. There's always anarchy for a couple of weeks and all your cities start on fire.
I mean,
we're Venezuela.
Yeah. I mean, you're right.
Once Americans can't get toilet paper, then we'll have a chance,
We're watching this in real time in Venezuela.
Doesn't that cause deforestation? Why aren't the alarmist, left-wing, socialist, communist, environmentalists going crazy?
Well, no, because Ed learned about photosynthesis, you see. All that carbon's going to make the trees grow better. So if the cities burn, the trees will grow. And what's the problem?
I'm saying they don't have toilet paper, so they have to use leaves or sheets of paper. Or, that's going to kill trees, right? I mean,
the toilet paper comes from trees and
there's no photosynthesis without the leaves.
They'll have to use.
Hang on, Steve. So that leads to the obvious phrase that was on the front of a book one time: "Eats Shiites and leaves."
Eats Shiites and leaves.
Well, that's where. And the other part about this is that Carl. Thank you, Carl. I've been trying to tie these 2 together, other than a couple newspaper clips. State of New Hampshire versus Carl Gibson. State's list of potential trial witnesses. Now comes the state of New Hampshire through its attorney's office, AG. Provides a list of potential witnesses for the court, and one of them is Vince Greco from Deerfield, New Hampshire. He's the representative of Credo PAC in New Hampshire. He was the lead guy. So this is the state's witness list. What's got Nick Reed from the Concord Monitor, Maureen Mann, Allison Vachon, New Hampshire AG's office, and
he was
Debbie,
working for her,
and Paul Broder and Yvonne Dean Bailey. That's who's their possible witnesses. So why would the state of New Hampshire want to call Vincent Greco, 32, of Deerfield, New Hampshire? Because he and Carl Robert Gibson worked together on these political dirty tricks.
So
let's tie it all together.
Why wouldn't they be calling you? The obvious pregnant question there is you probably know more about this stuff than anybody else.
You just answered the question.
Yeah, I know. But again, it goes to my previous little soliloquy here on the rule of law.
If the state was serious about prosecuting, they would have Ed as an expert witness, and every time the suspect lied, the defendant lied about what he did or where he was, we call the expert witness Mr. Naile of CNHT to
rebut.
Could you maybe tell us
about the time Carl put his arm around me in courtroom outside the courthouse?
Yeah, could you
was explaining this to me?
Yeah. Could you possibly tell me what you observed at that time and date?
It's, if you can't take an amicus brief that has everything you'd need to know about Carl, his address in Wisconsin, photographs of him holding up his burned clothes when his apartment in Wisconsin burned, his voting record in Wisconsin, his arrest records in 5 or 6 different states, what he's done with General Electric, what he did with Mississippi Public Radio. If you don't want to bring that into your case, you're not trying to win your case. And I've seen this with the Attorney General's office before in the college students versus the state with their ability to use mobile domiciles to vote. That case was not won by the AG's office on purpose. They walked in and stipulated that domicile meant residence and residence meant domicile. It's right in the court record. Yeah. So I've seen this. I know how it works. I'm not stupid, but I am persistent.
Yeah, now, this doesn't go against Democrat Joe Foster. You also ran into this with Republican Kelly Ayotte.
Yeah, and the person before that.
Yeah.
It's the institutionalized corruption in the state of New Hampshire that it just exists.
So I want listeners...
It's bipartisan corruption.
Listeners should know that we are not a blue state. We are not a purple state. We are a red state that the Attorney General's office, the Secretary of State, and the past major media, they're pretty much gone now, have manipulated into a state where the Democrats can count on winning major seats on every election. When it comes to towns and things like the legislature, we can take over they can't control the legislature and the Senate like they can the House and Senate seats. So that's what's going to happen in a statewide election. The people that come here to campaign for president, the left wing, Obama and his people, hand over voter checklists, very well done, gleaning of the voters you want to count. Yeah, the analytics are all handed over to these people, and they can win a race against Kelly Ayotte, and they can win a Senate seat for Jeanne Shaheen. But when it comes to the towns and the legislature, New Hampshire is still pretty rough and tumble and independent. And if we could clean this mess up, we'd have a real view of what New Hampshire's like.
I'll take exception to that last bit in the House, because as we have seen before with Doug Scammon, and now we're seeing again with the democratically appointed Republican New Hampshire Speaker of the House and his cadre.
And why are they doing it? Because they can't win those seats.
Understood. But when you look at the Republican Party and you see somebody, let's look at Jeb Bradley and Chuck Morse as well. When they're and the RNC committee woman and committee man, Steve Dupree, just got to write about him again this week in my very brief time. It's always nice to give him a hard slap when I can. But when you look at the political leadership actively not doing what they promise to do, what they say that they stand for, what are we left with?
Well, they alienate their base.
Oh, they are. Absolutely.
If that's your goal, then you win. You've done a very good job at alienating your base. What comes after that, though?
That is the problem.
Then you have no base to win elections with.
Then you have Donald Trump.
And Steve Dupree has done an excellent job of ticking off the base, ripping off his party, and generally acting like he deserves that position. The one thing he does do is he fights to keep the first in the nation primary in New Hampshire.
Oh, big deal.
No.
We'd be happy if we didn't have it.
No. So, but where I was going, that begs the question: why?
Money.
Yeah, because the money comes in from out of state, and Obama lists.
It's the
John
brass,
Kerry left his list.
It's the brass ring, though. It isn't just because all that money comes
for
in.
The consultants.
You look at Jennifer Horn.
They get to meet all the candidates. They get to meet all the consultants.
They get in front of all the media.
And they get to make put themselves on lists at all the right parties with all the right people, and that's all that really matters. And we have to take a break. Could you call Jennifer for me, please, sir?
I will.
We need to move forward into our next segment. We will be right back, but we can pick this up on the other side of her interview in 20 minutes or so. Everybody stay tuned. This is Grok Talk.
Grog Talk.